Have you ever been sitting in a lecture, maybe feeling like you're just passively downloading information? Maybe even asking yourself, when am I ever actually going to use this in the real world? Or maybe you're trying to pick up a new skill, but the way it's taught just feels completely disconnected from how things really play out. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a really smart approach to learning, one that promises to make understanding much more active, meaningful, and genuinely useful, especially when you're tackling complex stuff like mathematics. We're going to try and demystify some academic terms, pull out some surprising insights that could honestly transform how you approach learning.
Yeah, we're unpacking insights from a recent research paper. It's titled The Effect of Flipped Realistic Mathematics Education on Students' Achievement, Mathematics Self-Efficacy and Critical Thinking Tendency. Quite a mouthful. But it was published in Education and Information Technologies. In this study, it gives us a fantastic lens, not just on what works brilliantly in the classroom, but how those same principles can apply directly to your learning journey, whatever you're trying to master.
Right. So our mission here is to explore this innovative teaching method, kind of extract the core ideas that could help you become a more effective, maybe more confident learner. So yeah, let's unpack this. You mentioned it combines two cutting-edge approaches. Let's start with that first one, the flipped classroom. When you hear flipped learning, what should come to mind? Are we talking about turning education upside down, like literally?
Not quite literally, no. A flipped classroom or flipped learning, it basically turns the traditional model on its head, but in a much more productive way. So instead of the teacher lecturing in class and then you go home and struggle with homework alone.
The classic model.
Right. You get the foundational content before class. Often it's through videos, maybe readings, online stuff you do at your own pace. Then that really valuable class time, it's all about active learning, collaborative problem solving, applying the concepts with the teacher right there, acting as a guide. It's a really deliberate shift from that passive teacher talks at you model to something active and student-centered.
Okay, so you learn the basics at home, your own speed, then you come to class ready to actually do the work, to experiment, maybe struggle a bit, but get direct support from classmates and the teacher. That sounds incredibly efficient and, frankly, more empowering for the learner. But what about that second part? Realistic mathematics education, RME. What makes math realistic? I mean, is there unrealistic math out there?
That's a really great question, and it gets right to the heart of this RME theory. It was developed by the Freudenthal Institute over in the Netherlands, and it's basically been on two core ideas. First, math has to be grounded in reality, something you can connect with. Second, it has to be seen as a human activity, something people do.
A human activity.
Interesting. Yeah, it's about making sure the problems feel experientially real to whoever's learning. Yeah. And it's not just about, taking a math formula and then finding a real-world problem to stick it onto. What's really fascinating here is that RME is more about students kind of reinventing the math concepts from those realistic situations, starting with their gut feelings, their informal understanding, and moving towards the formal math language.
Okay, now that sounds powerful. And the paper gives a great example, right? Like learning the mean value theorem, not from some dry definition, but by analyzing a speeding ticket scenario.
Exactly. That's a classic RME example.
Suddenly, this abstract theorem becomes tangible. You can picture yourself driving, seeing the cameras, maybe worrying if you averaged over the speed limit between 2 points. Yeah. It makes the math feel alive.
Precisely. And RME isn't just a vague idea. It works through specific principles. There's the activity principle. Students have to be actively building their knowledge, not just receiving it. That connects right to the reality principle, using those real-world scenarios, like the speeding ticket, to make abstract ideas concrete right from the get-go.
Okay.
And then there's the guidance principle. This is where the teacher's role changes. They aren't just lecturers. They facilitate this guided reinvention. They steer students towards the key mathematical insights, but without just giving them the answer.
So they're guiding the discovery.
Exactly. It makes math feel less abstract, more like genuine problem solving, kind of like how we figure things out in everyday life.
Okay, so putting it together. Learning changes when and where you get the basics, putting you in control. RME changes how you learn, making it real, making it active. So what happens when you combine these two? You get FRME, flipped realistic mathematics education. Sounds like a recipe for some seriously effective learning.
It really does seem to be a potent mix. This specific study, they set up an FRME approach for a pre-engineering math course. For the out-of-class part, students use platforms most people know, like Google Classroom and also Edpuzzle.
Oh yeah, Edpuzzle.
Right. So they watch instructional videos, and yes, somewhere from places like Khan Academy, very familiar resources. But here's the clever bit. They took short quizzes embedded right into the videos.
So immediate feedback.
Immediate feedback, checks for understanding, and crucially, they were given these real-world problems to start thinking about before they even came to class.
So they're already mulling over the challenge, maybe like that speeding ticket thing, before they even walk in the door. And the tech, Edpuzzle, let the researchers track things, like did they watch it, how long did they spend?
Exactly. They could see if students watched the videos, how long they spent, if they completed the tasks on time. It adds a layer of accountability, but also insight for the teacher into where students might be struggling before class starts.
Smart. So you know who maybe needs a bit more help.
Precisely. The system could even flag if someone kept rewatching a certain section, indicating confusion. Then, when they got into the classroom sessions, that's where the RME principles really kicked in. Students worked in groups, discussing different ways to solve the problems, trying them out, figuring out general strategies for similar situations. They even prepared presentations to share their group solution with everyone.
So lots of active discussion and collaboration.
Definitely. And the teacher's role totally shifted. No more standing at the front lecturing for the whole time.
Yeah.
They were facilitating discussions, giving targeted feedback, clarifying those specific misunderstandings they may be spotted from the pre-class work. It really flips the classroom dynamic from passive listening to active collaborative exploration. Students are truly doing the math.
Okay, so FRME sounds great in theory. Active, real, student-centered. But how did the researchers actually figure out if it worked better than, say, just doing the realistic math part without the flipping? They used this quasi-experimental study, pre-test, post-test, non-equivalent group design. That is a mouthful. Can you break that down for us? What does that actually mean in terms of how reliable the findings are?
Yeah, it sounds super technical, doesn't it? But the core idea is pretty straightforward. They wanted to compare their new FRME method against a more conventional RME approach. So still using realistic problems, but without the pre-class video component.
Okay.
Now, quasi-experimental just means they couldn't use perfect random assignment, like in a lab. In real schools, you often have to work with existing classes.
Right. Practical limitations.
Exactly. So the groups weren't formed randomly, making it quasi, but to make sure it was still a fair comparison, they did pre-test, post-test. They tested everyone before the study started, the pre-test, to make sure both groups were starting from a similar level of knowledge.
Establishing a baseline.
Right. They checked that the groups were non-equivalent, maybe in how they were formed, but were equivalent in their starting math ability for this topic. Then, after the teaching period, the intervention, they tested everyone again, the post-test. By comparing the change from pre-test to post-test in each group, they could see which method led to greater learning gains. It's a robust way to measure impact in real-world settings, even without that perfect randomization.
Got it. So it's a practical way to do a fair comparison in a real school. Makes sense. And what exactly were they measuring besides just test scores? You mentioned mathematics, self-efficacy, and critical thinking tendency. These sound important, but maybe a bit fuzzy. What are they really about?
Absolutely crucial concepts, and they go way beyond just getting the right answer on a test. Let's take them one by one. First, mathematics self-efficacy, or MSE. This isn't just feeling generally good about yourself. It's your specific belief, your confidence in your own ability to succeed at a particular math task or to do well in a math course.
So very specific to math.
Very specific. The study used a validated scale to measure it. And why does it matter so much? Well, research consistently shows students with higher MSE tend to set higher goals for themselves. They persist longer when they hit tricky problems.
They don't give up as easily.
Exactly. And they're actually more likely to choose and stick with careers in science, technology, engineering, and math STEM fields. It's about fostering that inner belief. Yeah, I can figure this out, even when it's tough. It ties into that idea of a growth mindset, believing your abilities aren't fixed.
Okay, so MSE is about believing you can do the math. What about the other one? Critical thinking tendency.
Right, critical thinking tendency. This is slightly different. It's not just about your ability to think critically, but your inclination or drive to do so, your disposition.
So not just can you, but do you? Do you want to?
Precisely. It's that internal motivation to engage in critical thinking, to take information, process it logically, creatively, analyze it, question assumptions, and reach well-reasoned conclusions. In math, this is really tied to tackling those complex context-based problems, the realistic ones that need more than just plugging numbers into a formula. They require reasoning, evaluating different approaches, synthesizing information. So it's about cultivating that habit of mind.
Interesting distinction, ability versus inclination. Okay, so we have the setup, the measurements.
Mhm.
After all this flipping and grounding in reality, what did they actually find? Did FRME make a difference compared to just RME on its own? What did the numbers show?
The results were really quite positive, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty encouraging across all three areas they measured.
They
First,
are.
learning achievement. Both groups actually improved quite a bit from pre-test to post-test, which, it's good news for RME in general. Using realistic problems works.
Okay, good baseline.
But the FRME group, the ones who did the flips learning with the realistic math, showed a significantly higher increase in their post-test scores compared to the group that just did conventional RME.
Ah, so the flipping added something extra.
It really seems like it did. The suggestion is that those pre-class activities, watching the videos, doing the embedded quizzes, it really helps students get a solid grasp on the basic concepts before class. So they were better prepared for the deeper, more complex problem solving in class.
Like warming up before the big game.
Kinda, yeah. Or like reviewing the playbook. It taps into cognitive science ideas too, like the testing effect. Quizzing yourself helps you learn, and making things a bit harder up front, grappling with it before instruction, can make the learning stick better later.
Okay, so achievement boosted. What about that self-belief, the MSE?
Similar story there. For mathematics self-efficacy, the FRME group showed a significant improvement. The comparison group also saw a slight increase, but it wasn't statistically significant in the same way.
Wow, so they actually felt more confident about their math skills.
It appears so. And the researchers think that increased autonomy, being able to watch videos at their own pace, pause, rewind, combined with the act of learning in class, likely contributed to that. The study actually says increased student ownership over their learning environment can lead to a higher level of autonomy and responsibility, which in turn can lead to a higher level of self-efficacy.
Makes sense. Feeling in control boosts your confidence.
Exactly. It helps build that I can do this feeling, that growth mindset we talked about.
Okay, 2 for 2. What about the critical thinking tendency? Did FRME nudge that as well?
Yes, again. The FRME group also outperformed the comparison group on the measure of critical thinking tendency.
So they were more inclined to think critically afterwards.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
The idea is that engaging with those realistic, often complex problems outside of class first, and then coming together to collaboratively hash out solutions, debate approaches, and present their reasoning in class. That whole process really seemed to cultivate that disposition.
It forces you to analyze and justify.
Right. When you constantly have to apply knowledge to new situations, explain your thinking, consider others' viewpoints, it naturally builds that habit of critical analysis and reasoned judgment.
And they didn't just rely on the numbers, right? You mentioned student interviews. Those qualitative insights often add so much color.
Oh, absolutely. And they really reinforce the quantitative findings. Students in the FRME group highlighted three main benefits pretty consistently. First, just as you'd expect, collaboration and interaction. They really felt they had more chances to work with their peers and, importantly, get that individualized feedback from the teacher because lecture time was now problem-solving time.
Right, the teacher's freed up.
Exactly. One student put it perfectly, saying something like, in the FRME, we discussed in groups, presented our results, and got feedback from the teacher, which enhanced my performance. That pure learning and direct guidance is powerful.
Definitely. What else?
Second, they love the personalized learning aspect. They specifically mentioned, being able to pause, replay, and revise parts of the video based on my pace of learning. That control is huge, especially for tricky concepts.
Oh, totally. Being able to rewind without feeling embarrassed.
Yeah. And finally, they felt it improved their problem-solving ability. Those realistic problems, they said, help them imagine the situation and look for a possible solution. It made the learning feel more meaningful, more immersive. Another student said it made them more engaged and interested. It really seems like connecting the abstract math to concrete reality made it click.
That's fantastic. What a really fascinating deep dive this has been. This study makes such a compelling case, doesn't it, for combining that flipping, taking control of the when and how of learning basics with making the content truly realistic and hands-on, especially for subjects like math that can sometimes feel really abstract or, detached.
It really does. It underscores that effective learning isn't just about covering material or passively absorbing facts. It's about actively engaging with it, wrestling with it, connecting it to your world, and building that genuine feeling of competence, that self-efficacy. And these principles, they really extend way beyond just math class. You can see them applying in almost any field where you need deep understanding, critical thinking, and the ability to apply knowledge. It really brings home that learning is fundamentally a human activity, and it works best when it feels relevant and when you're actively involved in building your own knowledge.
So maybe here's a thought for everyone listening to sort of mull over after this deep dive. Think about a challenge you're facing right now, or maybe a complex topic you're trying to get your head around. Could be anything: a new skill for work, a hobby, even understanding a complex issue. How could you maybe flip your approach to learning it? Could you find some foundational videos or readings to absorb first on your own time? And how could you make it more realistic? Could you connect it more directly to your life, your work, maybe find ways to actively apply it or discuss it with others? Perhaps it's as simple as watching a detailed tutorial before you try that complicated recipe you've been meaning to tackle. Or maybe it's breaking down a huge work project into smaller, realistic steps you can collaborate on, learning and adapting as you go. Just some food for thought on how to boost your own achievement, self-efficacy, and critical thinking. We really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable tools, maybe some fresh perspectives for your own ongoing learning journey.